Hi, in this session we'll cover UI5 advanced topics. So in this we'll be covering the SAP UI5 Developer Studio, then what is the data binding, and after that we'll cover SAP UI5 project. So what is my SAP UI5 Developer Studio? SAP UI5 Developer Studio is a set of tools for Eclipse that greatly simplify the development process for the UI5 applications and the controls. It includes the wizards for project and view controller creation, then the wizards for the control development, the code completion for the UI5 controls, then the team provider for NGAP and BSP repositories. After that, the application preview with an embedded ZT server, then the proxy servlet to prevent the cross-site scripting errors. So this is how we need to create the project using the Developer Studio. So first of all, in Eclipse we have to right click on the project pane to bring up the context menu, or we can directly go to the file and we can click on the new project. Then we have to just select this project from the file menu. Once done, we have to select the SAP UI5 application project as a project type. Then we have to click on this next. After that, we have to enter the name of the project. Like in this case, we have taken the example of Hello World. Then we have to choose between the desktop or the mobile as the target device for our new project. So herein we have to select the target device, whether it is a desktop or it is a mobile. Now in the use default location, it will automatically take the default location to store this project. If we want to change it, then we can go to the browse and we can select for any location where we want to save this project. After that, we have to leave the checkbox create an initial view checked, and we have to click on next further. Then we have to enter the name of the initial view. Like in this case, we have given the main, and we have to leave the rest of the entries at default settings. So here we can see that we can have the option of development paradigm as the JavaScript, XML, JSON and the HTML. And we will leave it by default as a JavaScript, and we will click on next. So the last window here, it will give me a summary screen containing the project properties, and we have to click on finish. Now we can see the message from the Eclipse that whether this kind of project is associated with the Java EE perspective. So do we want to open this perspective now? So we have to click to yes to switch to the Java EE perspective. Then we will get into the Java EE perspective, and we will be able to see the new project IDE. So this is the window which will open up. After that, we have the UI controls. So now we have seen how to create the new project. So there is a second concept which comes up, which is the UI controls, which we will be discussing in this section. So now what are my UI controls? So the UI control gallery, it provides the deep information on each UI control with reference to the API. So it working with it helps us to know like how to work with the controls, how to work with the layouts. So all these things we can check with the help of the UI controls. Now the SAP UI5, it provides us the different type of UI controls. So they can be the simple controls, complex controls, value holders, dialogues, UX3 controls and the layout. So my simple controls, so they are like the label, button, link, text view, and these are the basic controls since they are required and used for nearly any application design. After that, the value holders, so the value holder section, it contains the controls that offer the value list such as the combo box, list box or the drop down box, as well as the controls where the user can make the interactive choices on the data selection. like we have the checkbox or the radio button group. Then in the layouts, the feature set that is available with the layout controls varies from basically designing a screen area or a page by using a divider to providing the complex layouts such as the matrix layout or the absolute layout. After that, we have the complex controls. So the complex control category, it contains the controls that overall allow embedding the other controls. These are highly flexible regarding the content display and allow to mix the various design aspects to gain the rich user interfaces. Then the dialogues. So these are there are the two various flavors of the dialog controls available. The dialog control generally would be used with a generic approach where the message box is the kind of predefined since it already provides the typical message types. After that, we have the UX3 controls. So here the new UX3 patterns like the shell, thing inspector or the EX act, they are described. After that, we have the others. So in this section we'll find the information on the rich tooltip control, which is available for many controls and by this category independent. So these are the different type of UI controls and we'll be able to find information about all these on the help pages. After that, let's discuss the common one which we commonly use. The first one is the button. So it is just a simple push button. So the button control, it represents a simple push button. It is used for initiating the actions such as save or print. It can contain some text, an icon or both. So the order of the two can be configured by applying the additional styles by custom classes. Applications can give a different style to any button. So we have the attach press assign event handler for the push action and the light property for a button with the hover effect. So this is the sample code for which we need to use if we want to use this button control in our application. After that, we have the text field. So the text field is used for the single row text input. If the configured text value contains HTML or script tags, those will be escaped. So a maximal length for the field can be set using the max length property. The text field, it can have the modes editable or read only, and it can have the status enabled or disabled. So to visualize some semantic states such as error or the warning, the value state property is provided. So when the user makes some changes on the text, the change event is fired. So it is possible to react on any text changes. So these are that's what the slide is saying, that it has the properties like value, enabled, visible and the value state. So it is HTML or CSS input is escaped. After that, we have the methods focus, and this is the sample code which we have to use when we use the text field control in our application. After that, we have the image. So the image control is a wrapper around the HTML tag for the graphics. So there are two main scenarios how the image control is used. So the first one is as a visually appealing clickable area in the form of an image button or as a purely decorative element. So in the second case, the images are not predefined as the tab stops in the accessibility mode. So whether or not an image is decorative, it can be configured with the property of the same name. So here we can see that this is the sample code for the image control. After that, we have the autocomplete. So the autocomplete control is used for the single row text input like the text field control, and it can be used as such. So the difference to the text field control is the possibility to add the suggestion values which help the user during the text input. So during the typing, a list with the suggestions is displayed which can directly be selected by the user. So the selections or the suggestions can be defined via the aggregation item of the type SAP UI core list item. So it is the text field with the proposed values. It works with the list items, and the properties of it are the items and the selected key, and the methods are the add item. Then again, this is the sample code for the autocomplete. After that, we have the combo box. So the combo box is used to have a text field with a list of predefined entries. So during the typing, a possible value is suggested using the auto completion. Additionally, we can enter the values into the text field that are not the part of the list. So the properties are the items and the selected key, and the events are the change or the live change, and the method is the get live value. So this is again the sample code for the combo box. Then we have a tree. So the tree control, it displays the item in a hierarchical manner. The control can be used to develop the structural views such as the navigators or the explorers. Each displayed item, it can have some children, and the user can expand and collapse these items. The tree control comes in the two flavors, that is my full and the transparent, which can be set using the show header attribute of the type Boolean. In its full version, the tree displays a header with a title and buttons that allows the user to expand or collapse all of the nodes at once. In the transparent version, the tree hides the header and the borders, and the backgrounds are made transparent. So for the configuration of the tree, the attributes of the tree node control can be used. A tree node, it can have a text and an icon. It is also possible to decide if a node shall have an expander and if it shall be expanded or not at the first load. So in order to create the data for the tree nodes are created nested by using the add node method. So the same method is used to add the root of the hierarchy. So here the class tree and the tree node is there. Then the tree consists of the objects of type tree node. Add node to add tree node object is there. Then we have the attach select to assign the event handler. So this is the sample code for implementing the tree control in our application. Then we have the menu. The menu control, it represents a pop-up menu. A pop-up menu opens in front of the application, and it allows the user to select one of the shown actions which are implemented in the form of the menu items. So here the class are the menu and the menu item. Add item, add menu item object to the menu. Add submenu, it will add a menu item as a submenu, and attach press is the event handler. So this is again the sample code for it. After that, we have the table. This is the most important control which is there as part of the UI libraries. So the table control, it provides a set of sophisticated and comfort functions for the table design. So for each column, a template control must be defined which describes how the data is visualized. So the table control also provides the possibility for sorting and filtering based on the capabilities of the model. A drag and drop support for the columns and resizing of the table column widths. So for the selection of rows, a multi, a single and a none mode are available. Then many further properties are provided to adapt the visual appearance, like we have the row height, we have the visible row count. So there are the n number of properties which are available with this. So this is again the sample code for the table. After that, this is the table which is like showing me the view type comparison. So as we discussed that we have 4 type of views, that is my JS view, XML view, JSON view and the HTML view. So this table is telling us which feature is available in which type of view. So the first feature, that is the controls from the standard and the custom libraries. It is available in all my 4 views. After that, the self-contained registration of the custom library location, it is available only in the JS view. Similarly, the properties of the type string, int, boolean and float, so they are available in all my 4 view types. After that, the properties of other types, that is the object, it is available in JS view. Then the aggregation one-on-one, one-to-many, association one-on-one and one-to-many, so they also exist in all the 4 views. After that, the single event listener registration is available again in all the 4 views. Similarly, the multiple event listeners and or without the scope, so these are available only in the JS view. Then the simple data binding, it is available for all the views. However, the customized data binding, it is available only in the JS view. Then the embedded HTML, it is available with the XML view, and the dynamic control creation is available with the JS view. And the code completion in the Eclipse, it is available completely in the JS view, and in XML view it exists but with the limitations. After that, we have the templating. So this is available with the JS view, and the validation is available with my XML view. So these are the feature list which are available into my view types. Then we have the data binding. So first of all, the SAP UI5, it uses the data binding to bind the 2 data sources or the information sources together to keep them in sync. All the changes in one source are also reflected in the other one. So for data binding, we need a model and a binding instance. So the model instance, it holds the data and provides the methods to set the data or to retrieve the data from the server. It also provides a method for creating the bindings to the data. When this method is called, a binding instance is created, which contains the binding information and provides an event, which is fired whenever the bound data changes. An event can listen to this event and update its visualization according to the new data. So the UI uses the data binding to bind the controls to the model which holds the application data, so that the controls are updated automatically whenever the application data changes. So the data binding is also used the other way around, when changes in the control cause the updates in the underlying application data. For example, the data entered by the user. So this is called the two-way binding. After that, these are the steps which are involved in the data binding. So the first one is the no data binding. So in this step, we simply place some text on the screen using a standard sap.m.text control. So the text in this control is a hard-coded part of the control's definition. Therefore, this is not an example of the data binding. After that, we have creating a model. So in this, we create a model as the container for the data on which our application operates. Then create the property binding. So although there is no visible difference, the text on the screen is now derived from the model data. Then the two-way data binding. So in the examples used so far, we have used a read-only field to display the value of a model property. So we'll now change the user interface so that the first and the last name fields are displayed using the sap.m.input field, and an additional checkbox control is used to enable or disable the input fields. So this arrangement illustrates a feature known as two-way data binding. Now that the view contains more controls, we'll also move the view definition into an XML file. After that, the fifth step is the one-way data binding. So in contrast to the two-way binding behavior shown above, one-way data binding is also possible. So here the data is transported in one direction only, from the model through the binding instance to the consumer. but never in the other direction. In this, we will change the previous example to use one-way data binding. So this will illustrate how the flow of data from the user interface back to the model can be switched off if required. So whenever the data flows from the customer to the model and from the model to the customer, that is called my two-way data binding, and one-way data binding means that my data will flow only from the model to the consumer. It will never flow from the consumer to the model. After that, we have the resource models. So the business applications also require the language specific text used as labels and the descriptions on the user interface. After that, we have the step 7, which is optional, that is my resource bundles and my multiple languages. So the reason we have the resource bundles is to allow an app to run in the multiple languages without the need to change any code. So to demonstrate this, we will create a German version of the app. In fact, all we need to do is to create a German version of the resource bundle file. So the no code changes are needed. Then we have the binding paths, that is accessing the properties in hierarchically structured models. So in step 6, we stated that the fields in a resource model are arranged in a flat structure. So in other words, there can be no hierarchy of the properties. However, this is true only for the resource models. The properties within the JSON and the OData models almost always are arranged in a hierarchical structure. Therefore, we should take a look at how to reference the fields in a hierarchically structured model object. Then we have the formatting values. So how can we make our example more useful? So let's use the address data we have to show the address location on a map. So for this, we'll use the openly available Google Maps API. So in this, we will look at how the model property values can be programmatically formatted according to the requirements of the Maps API. Then we have the property formatting using the data types. So SAP UI5, it provides a set of simple data types such as Boolean, currency, date and float. So these data types can then be applied to the controls in order to ensure firstly that the value presented on the screen is formatted correctly, and secondly, if the field is open for input, that the value entered by the user conforms to the requirement of that data type. Then we have the validation using the message manager. So far we have created a currency field that can do the little more than the format itself correctly. So the currency data type also has the ability to validate that the user input conforms to the requirement of a currency. However, the data type validation functions are managed by SAP UI5, which of itself has no mechanism for reporting error messages back to the UI. Therefore, we need a mechanism for reporting the error messages raised by the validation functions back to the user. So in this, we will connect the entire view to a feature known as the message manager. Once this connection has been made, any validation error messages generated by the user's input will be passed to the message manager, which in turn will connect them to the appropriate view and control that caused the error. Then we have the step 12, so in which we have the aggregation binding using the templates. So the aggregation binding, it allows a control to be bound to a list within the model data and allows relative binding to the list entries by its child controls. Then we have the element binding. Now we want to do something with that newly generated list. In most cases, we'll use a list to allow the selection of an item and then show the details of that item elsewhere. So in order to achieve this, we use a form with relatively bound controls and bind it to the selected entity via the element binding. Then we have the expression binding. So expression binding, it allows us to display a value on the screen that has been calculated from the values found in some model object. So this way, simple formatting or the calculations can be inserted directly into the data binding string. Then we have the aggregation bindings using a factory function. So instead of hard coding a single template control, we'll use a factory function to generate the different controls based on the data received at runtime. So this approach is much more flexible and it allows the complex or the heterogeneous data to be displayed. So these are the 5 steps which are available to us as an option in the data binding. Then what are the different binding types? So we have 3 different type of binding types, that is my property binding, aggregation binding and the element binding. So the binding types, they are like for the property binding, it allows the properties of the control to get automatically initialized and updated from the model data. Then the aggregation binding is used to automatically create the child controls according to the model data. Then the element binding, it allows to bind the elements to a specific object in the model data, which will create a binding context and allow the relative binding with the control and all of its children. So this is especially useful in the master detail scenarios. So these are the 3 binding types. So my property binding, it allows the properties of the control to get automatically initialized and updated from the model data. So to define a property binding on a control, we have 2 options. We can either go in the settings object in the constructor of a control, or we can use the bind property method of a control. So once we have defined the property binding, the property is updated automatically every time the bound model property value is changed. So the most convenient way to define a property binding, which is sufficient in most cases, is to include the binding path within the curly brackets as a string literal in the settings object. Then the aggregation binding, it is used to automatically create the child controls according to the model data. So we can define the aggregation binding either in the setting object in the constructor or by calling the bind aggregation method. Aggregation binding, it requires the definition of a template which is cloned for each bound entry of the list. So for each clone that is created, the binding context is set to the respective list entry so that all the bindings of the template are resolved relative to the entry. The aggregated elements are destroyed and recreated whenever the bound list in the data model is changed. So the controls for the visualization of the large data set, for example the table of the row repeater, only create the clones for the currently visible entries and not for all the list entries by using a custom update aggregation method. To bind an aggregation, we create a template or provide a factory function which is then passed when defining the aggregation binding itself. In the setting objects, we can set up the aggregation binding. Then the element binding, it allows to bind the elements to a specific object in the model data, which will create a binding context and allow the relative binding within the control and all of its children. So this is especially helpful in the master detail scenarios. Binding an element, it allows to set the binding context of the element to the object referenced by the given binding path. Thus, all the relative bindings within the control and all of its children are resolved relative to this object. So for server-side models, the element binding triggers the request to the server to load the referenced object in case it is not yet available on the client. Element binding, it can also be defined relatively. So in case of relative element binding, the binding context is updated when the parent binding context is changed. So to define an element binding, we can use the bind element method on a control. So these are the different binding types we have. So this is the end of this session. So in this session, we have covered the data binding, Then we have seen like what are the different properties, what are the different UI controls we have. So all these things we have covered in this session. Thank you.